Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that this is an interesting and exciting little talk for you. We're totally and completely dedicated to art around here, as you will see and hear during this presentation. I'm the founder of LCF, and I'm on the board, and I also am the head of the art committee. And one of our other art committee members is with us, Mark Ormond, who is a very good friend of ours and has been phenomenal. And we'll be sort of splitting this up and having an open conversation.
Well, thank you, Penelope, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to be here today. And we're sitting here in the library and the office area of the reserve. And so we can look out the window and see what's going on here on the many acres. Plus, we're surrounded, as you can see behind us, by books and lots of works of art, some of which we'll be speaking about this afternoon. And while we were preparing this at our homes, I forgot about the scale of a lot of these works, and that's so important when you're talking about them as objects. And so we'll be talking about a lot of the works in the collection and also the mission and vision of the foundation that has art as a central part of its mission.
Our mission since we started, we were seated in science, but we always believed that it was art that was going to help us communicate our message. Why? Because it creates an enormous empathy in people. So it's a better way for us to get our message out. So we use a lot of art in everything we do. Every place that on the outside of our buildings, the inside, everywhere we go, all of our publications, all of our website information, everything is rooted in trying to be beautiful and informative and empathic. We are the only organization, the only wildlife conservation organization in the world that has art in our mission statement. We have an art committee. We have an art database, we have an art development plan, and we have this phenomenal collection. Our art database has over 600 pieces in it. We take art very, very seriously at LCF. Now, what our main goal is, or what I should say our vision is, art is a highway along which mind meets viscera and mind meet for lemur conservation. And we use art constantly in everything we do. Now we advance the art in the Lemur Conservation Foundation through all the plastic arts. We do decorative, plastic, performing arts, literature, everything we do. And it's to solidify and really make everyone totally and completely aware of what we're doing. We have a lot of art partners, Ringling College of Art and Design, Art Center Sarasota, and New College are our biggest partners. We've got a lot of art with many more pieces than you see. Our art database has over 600 pieces in it. But what we do is we have art in drawers, we have art in all the buildings on the campus, etc. And several years ago, we had an art exhibit of all of this, and it was curated by Mark. So I want him to talk about how unique our collection is so that you get a better feeling for it, and a little bit about the Vanishing Show.
Okay, thank you, Penelope. So the Vanishing Show was in May of 2014 at the Sarasota Art Center in downtown Sarasota on 41 at around 13th, I think it is. And it was really an opportunity to bring many of the pieces that are here behind us and around us to downtown Sarasota for people to see and appreciate the mission of the foundation and also how artists are participating in that mission. So I think rather than talk too much about the specific pieces, we're going to be seeing them as we move along here. So I'll talk more about them as we go through the images we have. And here's one now. So this is a really exciting piece that was done. And one of the things I like about this collection, which I think is unique, is that it's contemporary and artists are invited to participate, which makes a big difference. I've learned in my many years as being an art curator that you can do open calls, and actually there was one recently and the winners were just announced from it. But many artists who are very busy, they like to be invited. So when artists are invited, I've discovered they really make a commitment that's different than when they're just competing in open calls. So the pieces you're going to be seeing are works that were, the artist was contacted mostly by Penelope, I think, to come out here and see and meet the lemurs in person and spend some time with them. And so the other thing I think you'll notice in the collection is, of course, each approach to the challenge of the foundation and the challenge of each individual lemur, which is survival in this world today, presents the artist with an opportunity to show their experience here at the reserve. And so I think when you look at these works we're going to be looking at today, you'll come to appreciate that all the time and all the visceral imprinting that Penelope mentioned, and all the other sensory imprinting that goes on out here, it's so quiet. And the first time you come out here, you realize, I mean, the expression, you could hear a pin drop. It's like you could hear a feather fall out here sometimes. It is so quiet. And it's really wonderful because you're in another world. And so you are, as an artist, exposed to all the sort of sensory stimulation that the lemurs are who are living out here, which is kind of wonderful. And so all of those experiences that are imprinted on the individual artist then becomes part of who they are and who they're becoming as they also take on the challenge of helping the world to understand that the lemur is endangered and their habitat is as well. So this piece is of these four lemurs, and they're abstracted somewhat on this picture plane, and so the attention is drawn to the tree and to their beautiful red coats and their tails, and they seem to be almost not attached to the tree. And we were talking about this yesterday, that so many of the works, I think, do communicate this danger that the lemurs have, in that they're losing their forest. They're losing their attachment to the natural structure of trees that helps them to live and survive. So, any comments about this one?
I do. This painting was our very first painting, and it was done by Catherine McKenna, and her father was on our board, and he was a famous paleontologist, and so it all came through science. Every bit of it started in science. But Catherine is very well known for her Western artwork. She's represented it in many different museums around the country. And we were thrilled that she made this very first painting for us, which a lot of people say this is their favorite painting in the whole collection. So let's move on to the next one. You want to talk about it?
Okay, so this was a commission, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And by Joseph Centaur. And these are watercolors, and they were translated into bookmarks to help raise money for the foundation. And again, I think that watercolor is a really beautiful medium because the paper that you work on absorbs both the water and the pigment that you put on it. So there's this very kind of symbiotic relationship that the artist has by applying these pigments on the paper. And I think too, for me, the fact that this artist chose watercolor, there's something evanescent about that medium. And of course, this is the plight of the lemur as well, as possible extinction unless something is done, like the creation of the foundation here in Mayaka. But there's a delicacy to this work, which I think communicates a wonderful intimacy that the artist has with the lemur.
And Joe Centaur is a New York artist. He had a major retrospective at the Phoenix Art Museum several years ago. And he teaches at the Studio Arts in Yale. He teaches in many different places. He's a wonderful artist. And again, this came through friendship. We asked him if he would do something for us, and he created these absolutely exquisite pieces.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. As Penelope said, most of these commissions came out of some kind of connection with the individual and friendship that then grew into their wanting to participate in the art collection program. So the next work is by Craig Rubidou, who has lived in Sarasota his whole life. And these are two different works that he made for the foundation. And I've known Craig since 1983. And we used to go out on the Braden River and canoeing. And he has this incredible affinity with nature and with people. I think sometimes more with nature than with people, but he combines them in his work, such as this one here, with the woman with a lemur on her head. And the reason I say that is that his figures of people are usually more generalized and dreamy and almost stylized and lyrical, where when he commits to a creature, an animal, there seems to be much more of a connection with the personality of the sitter, being, in this case, the lemur. But he's a treasure of Sarasota, the Sarasota community, and I think this is an amazing work that demonstrates how accomplished he is as an artist. And the next work that we're going to look at here, this is a pastel on paper, and the lemur is about 30 inches high, actually. So the lemur is presented over life size. And this is a very animated work, I think, if you can see it up close or you zoom in on this, all the strokes of the pastel that went into.
It's actually acrylic.
Acrylic, okay. Thank you for that correction. This is the challenge of working with digital imagery. At any rate, the artist has captured the animation of the face and these kinds of blue highlights on the incredible dark, rich black of this lemur's physiognomy. And Penelope, do you know anything about the pattern or the fabric behind it? Because I don't recognize that.
What she was attempting to do, again, Judy North is a major artist. She's in San Francisco. She's been associated with the San Francisco museum out there and has shown, she's been a teacher, an art teacher for many, many decades. And again, I went to her and asked her if she would please do one. She knew nothing about lemurs. She did not come, but she looked at hundreds of pictures and wanted to focus in on the red ruff lemur. And what she did is she chose little images that you might see embroidered in fabric in Madagascar. And she added those images to behind the portrait of Hale, who was one of our primary female red ruff lemurs who gave us lots of babies. Jean Blackburn?
So Jean is also a Florida native, Jean Blackburn, and I don't know how many generations her family, she can trace her family here in this community, but she can, and she's also uniquely tied to the environment here. She and her husband have a ranch on Mianatra Road where they have all kinds of creatures, some of whom they have brought to the ranch and others who have come to the ranch and they've adopted. So they have horses and sea otters and birds and dogs. And so I think that Jean came to the foundation, the reserve here, already understanding the landscape and would definitely have understood the lemurs being introduced to this landscape. So she came to it with a real affinity for creatures and for the landscape, and I think that all is manifest in this particular work.
I just want to add a note about the animals. She's a rescue person, so people will bring her, and not people, the wildlife, fish and wildlife people will bring her river otters and deer and owls and sandhill cranes that are injured. She and her husband make sure that they're in a secure setting to either grow or be well, and then they're all released. So it's a real thing with her.
And Jean invited us for dinner one night, and they were fostering some sandhill cranes on their porch, and they wandered into the kitchen while dinner was being prepared. It was very interesting.
It was.
So this is an oil painting by an artist who was born in Germany and went to Ringling College, and then went to graduate school in London and came back to Sarasota and is teaching there now in the illustration department full time. So this is a work he did a few years ago. He also came out here, took photographs, spent a lot of time, and created this marvelous oil painting that is about 50 inches high. So this is well over life size. And when you look at it, as you are on the screen now, you probably think, oh, that could be a photograph. But while he uses photography as kind of sketchbook, he doesn't project onto canvas. He uses what we were talking about early, the imprinting, to then paint from memory what you're seeing on the screen. And what I was talking earlier about all these different kinds of imprints, if you get up really close to this canvas, you can see that all the areas of the painting are painted slightly differently. So they all pull together visually, but he's decided as a painting exercise to apply the paint in different areas of the canvas with a different language or mark making.
And this whole sequence that you've been seeing are all lemur portraits. These are real lemurs who have lived on this reserve. And the last one in this particular section, that's how we broke it up for you, is what we call the first family. And this was done by Mary Fussell, who was an amazing artist. She died of cancer a few years ago. And she has done everything. She's done installations, she's designed fabric, she made collages, she did enormous installations in buildings all over New Haven. And she, right after, this Alejandra, this baby in Christina's lap that you see in the middle of this beautiful composition, was our very first born on the Lemur Reserve. And I called Mary and asked her if she would please come down and render this. So she literally spent a couple of days sitting on the floor in the mongoose area and making drawings, and went home, and this is a pastel. And she created this beautiful piece. And one of the things, we mentioned that we try to send art everywhere. This particular piece was also turned into a screen for the front door of one of our shelters. I had it photoshopped and then put on, you know, the screening around the cars, the car wraps or whatever they're called. So we use this image, and it's over on one of our shelters. But it's absolutely one of my favorite pieces in the whole collection. It's just such a beauty. So now we've left all the pleasant stuff, and now we're getting into art with teeth. This is my bailiwick. This is what I love so much. We call it art with teeth because it's It has a tendency to be beautiful or charming or lovely, and then when you get into it and you realize what it's talking about, it sort of bites you. And that's the whole idea. This particular painting by Barbara Sandler was a very well-known artist in New York. She usually does men, and but they're based on images from the early 18th and early 19th centuries. So what she decided to do for us when I called her was she looked back at a lot of old naturalist books. And the naturalists, as you know, would go into the field and they would make little drawings of hands and faces, and they would, or the way the tails would go, you know, so that they could come back and then write about it scientifically. So she created this image in the likeness of one of these early explorers. Now, the funny thing is, it's not so funny. The reason that this is art with teeth as part of this particular section is when you realize that lemurs go back 55 to 60 million years ago. And only a couple of thousand years ago, people came to Madagascar, the lemurs started disappearing. The lemurs were probably seen by early explorers like the Portuguese and maybe the Sicilians who were sort of floating around out there. But for the most part, the very first record we have of a lemur being seen is in the 1600s. And what is shocking is less than 400 years later, they are on the verge of extinction. They're the most critically endangered mammals on the planet. So we are losing them. And that's one of the reasons that this art with teeth is so critical. Let's go to the next one. Let's see what. Okay, this was a winner of the art contest that we had a couple of years ago. So these are young people. This was from Ringling. This is a young student from Ringling. And what Lee Norton did in this painting is so touching because this mother and this child are living in a totally denuded landscape. Look at this. I mean, it's just so poignant and it's so incredibly sweet. And it came from one of the students, so they're getting it. That's the beauty of this. There are young people that are catching the lemur fire and trying to do something about the spectacular loss that we're experiencing. Next slide. This was a second prize winner for last year, and you're going to have to look very closely at it because it's called The New Predator. And the New Predator is that big machine on the left. But look at the energy in this painting. It is truly astonishing. And you see all the lemurs, they're all running away. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening to all the wild places on the planet. We're losing them, and we're losing them with an alacrity that's staggering. When you look at just the energy in this painting, she's caught that. M.J. King made this one, and it just knocks me out. But if there is a single artist on the planet that perfectly personifies beautiful and disturbing art, it's Alexis Rockman. And he's a well-known American artist, and he was the subject of a major exhibition at the Smithsonian Institution just a few years ago in the art museum there called A Fable for Tomorrow. And he's really brilliant, and he's particularly fascinating because his work is so incredibly realistic. And if you haven't had a chance to look at his work, just Google his work, Alexis Rockman. But this is the painting that he made for us. We took him, I took him to Madagascar a few years ago, actually it was 10 years ago, and with the sole purpose of creating a painting for us. And this is the beautiful creation that he made for us. I'd like you to look carefully at it. There are 3 creatures in it. There's a red ruff lemur, and there's a little chameleon, and a blue vanga on the right-hand side. If you look carefully at it, where is the lemur? He's out on a limb. If you look carefully down, let your eye go down all the way to the bottom of the tree. You'll see it's denuded. And then at the very bottom, and you'll have to do like a 10 magnification to see this, but at the very bottom there are trucks that are carrying away logs. And the painting also hints at other places, like you'll see the subcontinent of India, you'll see Africa. This is happening everywhere. And then to totally kick us in the solar plexus, he's wiped out the whole left side. It's all runny. And it's because Madagascar is disappearing. The world is disappearing. It's an incredibly powerful piece. And there was an exhibition just this past year in the Watka Museum in Washington, and Washington State, and this they borrowed this painting from us, and it really is, it really says it. It's perfect. It's like art with teeth. And what are we doing to our planet? It's all about that. I'm going to show you a couple of my little pieces now. And the one on the left is called Dans mes bras, Come Into My Arms, My Little Lemurs. And it's these are the last two baby lemurs on the planet. Madagascar is gone, and they're relegated to a wet world in which they're not going to be able to survive. So they're buddies, they're little companions, they're sea squirts at the bottom. And then you've got an octopus coming in to comfort them. And right next to that is Gates of Fire. And these are also the two little last lemurs, but they're really pretty cross about it. And everything's just going to immolate. But I want you to look closely as you can, to the fire on the left, because in it you'll see that there's a creature, and that creature is a salamander. And in the Middle Ages, they believed that salamanders lived through fire. So this particular Gates of Fire actually has a little hope to it. And we do have hope. Hope is our business. We wouldn't be with Lemur Conservation Foundation if we didn't believe we could make a difference. Okay, next section. Deborah Ross, you want to talk about it?
So this is Deborah Ross, and this is amazing watercolor on paper. And this is another medium where I think the viewer, you are invited to participate in the actual completion of the work of art. So here are the lemurs literally running across the two sheets and in a way disappearing into the paper, which again is emblematic of the challenge of the lemur and our challenge to save the lemur from extinction by doing something about it and supporting the foundation. So I think that this whole piece becomes a metaphor for, and is that message and is the power of art to engage you and have you be absorbed into this work and participate in it and actually complete the thought, the idea, the inspiration of the artist through their work of art. And that's why this program exists, to have artists engage you and to identify ways that you can participate in saving the planet and saving the lemur.
These are pieces of her work, and she's a master at gesture. She again is a New York artist. She teaches at the School of Visual Arts, and she's given workshops to like Pixar, so that they are better at making their creatures look more realistic. But she's a master of gesture. She makes these paintings very quickly, and they can be so poignant. There was one that that's not here because I couldn't find it, But there was one and that was so poignant to me. I kept staring at it, and I finally said, tell me what this painting is. What is this about? And she said, oh, that was a captive. It was a pet, and they were selling it for meat in Madagascar. And she did a little drawing of it. And it's devastating. I don't think she gave it to us because I would have used it in this. But she's a remarkable, remarkable artist. And she works very quickly, and she cuts right to the soul of the creature and to what we're talking about. Now, in addition to all of her individual work, she has created 6 of these really beautiful books, and they're all about individual lemurs, individual species of lemurs, and they all are about the hero. They're stories. All the stories were written by Alison Jolly, and who is a very famous primatologist. And they are really beautiful, and they're very poignant and touching stories. And Katie has put together an education program based on these books that has been taking over. Katie, how many states now teach the Aku?
Oh, I think it's 37, I believe.
37 states. These books are being used in the Aku project. So, but they are so, again, the poignancy of these books is astonishing. When you go through page by page by page, they move you, they delight you, they make you sad, they do everything. And that's the way to communicate with people. Again, there's that word, empathy. So these books are a real treasure. But in addition to what Deborah has done for us, we sent her to Madagascar to try to do the same thing over there. So the whole idea is that in Madagascar, a lot of the children are afraid to go into the forest. They're afraid of the creatures in the forest. They're especially afraid of chameleons, for instance. That's why we had them paint a chameleon. And the Malagasy are known for their taboos and their fears, and they're afraid that chameleons hold the spirits of the dead. So they kill chameleons. They see chameleons, they kill chameleons. I've witnessed this. I've been on a street corner when they've been trying to push the chameleon into the street to have the cars run over it. So how best to teach these children to not be afraid of chameleons and to understand them better? You take them into the forest with a forester, and you sit there, you really look at it, and you teach the children about what chameleons are. So the whole course was based on having them learn about their own environment. I mean, there are children in Madagascar who have never seen a lemur. That's a lot of the work that we're doing now in Anjana Haribe Sud and Mary JJ. But this is a different thing. We actually had formal workshops at Timpulu. So this is just some of the work that they did. And I find it charming and incredibly touching. So that's what you're seeing lemurs, and like in the one on the right there, you're seeing lemurs and musicians living together, because the musicians are living in the village, and guess what? The lemurs are right in the trees above them. And the little middle one there is probably one of my favorite pieces in the whole collection. I call it the Buddha lemur because it's just so charming. It's just all of their work. They were not only learning, but it's just so charming. And we've got hundreds of images from these kids. I wish I could show them all to you because they're just a miracle. And they're about their daily lives as well. It's really quite wonderful. You want to move on? Okay, sculpture. You want to talk about?
Okay, this is a work by Kathy Ruttenberg. It's a ceramic sculpture, and it's actually just to our right here on the wall. So it's almost, looks like the lemur's life size. Is that correct? No?
Yeah, no, the shafakas are a little bigger than that.
A little bigger than that. Okay, so it's a little under life size. But again, I think using this organic material of clay and then firing it and freezing it in time gives us a sense of a moment that we're stuck in literally here, where the planet is evolving and things are changing, and unless we do something about it, things are not going to be good for us or the lemurs. So I think this creates a lot of empathy, as Penelope was saying. I think all of the art in the collection has that power to give us a sense where we need to participate, and but also have joy in the habitat as it exists now, and how the artist was inspired to create this marvelous wall relief, really, is what it is.
You want to go to the traditional? This is a traditional sculpture. This is from Madagascar. It's really quite tall. It's how tall is it? Oh, well,
36 inches.
It's really 36, you think? Like about 30. It's a tall sculpture. These are used as funeral objects. Now, this is a replica of one, but the ones that they use are full size. So the man would be a full size man, and then the bird plays predominantly in a lot of these. This is called an alu-alu, and these funeral statues, or sometimes people think of them as like totems. But the bird plays a big part in these because the bird is an amazing creature that pulls together the land and the sky. So it's about transmigration or of the soul. So that's a tradition of a lovely illustration of a traditional piece of Malagasy sculpture.
So this was Penelope was very involved with this more than I was, certainly. But I do know these two artists, Mark Anderson and Michael Weishaupt. These were professional colleagues of mine and friends at Ringling College. So this was a multi-year project, was it not? Mm-hmm. And it's just fantastic as a functional sculpture. So it's very architectural, and it's utilitarian, and you have an amazing view of the entire reserve when you climb up to the top of this. The name of this piece is the Natalie Lee Quay Lemur Lotus Tower, and they wanted it to look like a lotus because the lotus grows from the muck into the light. So the artists wanted it to be a symbol of hope, which was fabulous. And it's really wonderful, and you can see in the middle picture, the lemurs like it as well. And the whole idea was that it was not only for scientists who could go up there and study them in the stratosphere when they're in the trees, but it was also for the lemurs. And it's like a jungle gym for them. And then I think the one on the far right, when we have classes and interns, they all love to have their photograph taken on it. But it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of art, and it stands in one of the lemur enclosures, and we're so proud of it. It did take us a while, and we had to raise a lot of money for it, but it is a beautiful, beautiful piece. No, and the lemurs do love it. I remember we came out here for an activity, and there were about 15 of us, and we waited about 40 minutes for the lemurs to have their fun, and then when they went off on a tree somewhere, I think then we could get on. But we just had fun watching them really enjoy it, and Mark was here and Michael, and they really enjoyed that too. So art can be a lot of fun for humans and creatures.
And it goes back to that collaboration too. I mean, we love collaborating with other institutions, and Ringling has been very, very close to us. Well, especially through Mark, but even before Mark. One of our board members was one of their board members, so he connected us with our first project there. All right, so now we're just going to tell you a little bit about a couple of programs that we're not just about pictures, we're about programs, and we do art. And the very first one that we're going to show you is the Art, Science, Environmental Imperative Program. And the idea for this was to have art and science are both based on intense seeing and envisioning realities, and there's a sense of curiosity and inventiveness and interpreting nature. Those exist in both science and in art. So we brought scientists and art together, scientists and artists together, to see if they could inform each other and their own individual work would become the richer for it. We tried to break down the barriers. So often there's so much pressure on both artists and scientists to focus, narrow it down, figure out what you want to do, et cetera, instead of like opening the whole thing up. So that's what this effort was. And it was really terrific. Now, the very first one that you see on the upper left there is a body map. And what we asked the students to do is do a body map, and they had to help each other because this is their whole body. And we just stretched out big brown pieces of paper, and we used ink and watercolor, et cetera. And they made their body maps. They helped each other do them. And the question that they were answering in this body map is, who are we and where do we come from? So this particular one by Lily knocked me out because she saw herself coming from a shell. And it's really a very poignant image. You have to, it's complicated, so you really have to stare at it for a minute to see that she's sort of kneeling. She's kneeling as she's crawling out of this shell. But the one on the lower right-hand side is drawing as knowing. So we had everyone, artists and scientists alike, draw. We brought down a skeleton. They all had to draw the skeleton, and it was really it was wonderful because again they were noticing things that they never would have noticed before. So this is actually a scientist student who made that little piece of art that I like really quite a bit. And the one to the left of that is really interesting, and the name of that is Who Are We? And you'll see that she's drawing a hand, but it's a lemur hand. So it's like we are all brothers, sisters. We are all connected. We're interconnected. That's what they kept looking at over and over again when we spent this week doing it, doing these projects. And the one on the upper right is What Do You See? What Do You See is the name of that one. And again, over and over again, the daily question was, what are you seeing? No, what are you really seeing? Really look at what you're seeing. Over and over again, we were asking those questions. And we think we're seeing something, but we're not. We don't necessarily look at something and really look at it. You have to take time to do that. So it was a very successful program. It sort of broke both sides up. They were really interested in deepening their own knowledge of whatever they were doing through this other media, either whether it was art or science. And then the esteto blitz. You want to take this one?
Okay, this was Penelope's brainchild, and she asked me to participate and try to get individuals involved. So we worked on this together, and we were able to bring quite a few faculty members and artists and teachers here for an entire day, which went by very quickly, sadly to say. But we were here from early in the morning till late afternoon, and we met here in this room. Some of us knew each other, some of us were meeting each other for the first time. So people from different backgrounds, people who had not been out here to the reserve before, some of the people had been here. And Penelope gave us a lot of information, as did some of the individuals, other individuals who work here, about what goes on here and about the lemurs in general, the history and the current challenges. And then everyone was really left on their own to gather information and to think, to be contemplative, and to come up with ideas and to collaborate. It was really a fantastic day, and I wrote about it at the end of the day, and I think it was one of the best days I'd ever had with a group of people that many of whom I didn't know, from different walks of life, from different backgrounds, but also to be in a place like this on 150 acres now?
130.
130 acres out here an hour from downtown Sarasota in another world, and being able to communicate with the lemur, because we were taken into the forest with various individuals on staff here. And I think during the day I saw it with a photographer friend. The lemurs got more comfortable with us after we had been here for 6 or 7 hours. And so there was a different kind of rapport with them. And the one on the right actually was quite a ham for Noelle McLeaf, who took that photograph. She teaches photography at Ringling College of Art and Design. So again, I think we're talking about the similarities actually in process between scientists and artists. And Penelope and I were talking about this yesterday, that most artists and scientists don't think about that. But when artists are contemplating something new, say, how do I capture an experience with a lemur that I've never had before? What's that process? Well, it's very similar. That you have a theory or you have a hypothesis, and the process is going to become a kind of experiment, and you're going to try maybe a medium, photography or watercolor drawing that you're accustomed to, or maybe you experiment with a new medium. And that was going on the day that I was here with Noelle and the other individuals, that people were sketching, they were drawing, they were taking movies and photographs with their phones or cameras that they brought. And so there you go. There's the similarity between the experimentation of an artist and the experimentation of a scientist. And we were also talking yesterday about Da Vinci, and I think we forget that one reason he was such a great portrait painter was because he was essentially a scientist, and he understood anatomy and chemistry and physics and biology. And so he had all that at his disposal in his mind when he was trying to figure out how do you paint the skin of a woman and make it appear realistic. So I think we had great conversations that day. I think people left inspired and transformed. And I think it's a great example of what is part of the mission of the foundation, and part of the success story as well.
I just want to add that esteto blitz is based on the concept of bio-blitzes. And bio-blitzes are where a group of scientists of different disciplines, so you'll have a bug man and a bird man and a tree man and whatever, and they all come together in a certain period of time, and they count everything that they're seeing, and it's called a bio-blitz. They do them in Central Park. They do them in specific, very tight areas so that you really can concentrate. And one of our friends said, you know, it would be really cool to do an esteto blitz. And instead of counting, you bring an essayist and a poet and an artist and a a sculptor and whatever, and you bring them all in for a certain amount of time and have them create an experience out of what is immediate. And that's what they were doing this day. And the one on the left by George, the mongoose, it touches me and cracks me up at the same time, because our mongoose lemurs are probably the sweetest ones on the reserve. They're certainly my favorite, and they've always been my favorites. But George has made this critter so angry. And I love the fact that it's like, do you remember the movie Network, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore? That's sort of what this feels like. It's like, look at what you guys are doing to us. Look at what you're doing to our planet. This isn't fair. Stop it.
Yeah, George was totally captivated, I think, that day. That was his first time he was here, right?
Yes. He wants to come again.
Yes.
He wants to come every day.
No, and so that was part of the experience too, was being here with people. I mean, I used to see George every day when he was getting his coffee in the morning, and we would chat. But I really got to appreciate him. We spent the whole day together, and so I think it was transformative that day, and I think it was for everybody that was here.
So shall we go to the movie? Okay. This is a film by Camille Weiner, who, again, has been wildly generous with us in terms of art and in terms of work that she's done for us. And this little flash animated film has been shown at, I think, 15 film festivals around the world. It's been seen by between 3,000 and 4,000 people. And we love it. It's only 5 minutes, and we're going to finish this and then come back and wind it up or see if you have any questions, okay? So this is Madaga Scars. Well, this has been a romp through the collection. I certainly hope you enjoyed it, but I want to leave you with a thought. Well, first of all, should we find out if there are questions? Okay.
How can someone get involved and create a piece for the foundation?
Great. We're in the middle of World Lemur Festival right now, and we just had, 145? 137 entries come in, people from all over the world. We opened up the contest, and it's all on our website today. All the winners are there, and you'll see all the art from everyone. And it was thrilling. We had a lot of entries from Madagascar, of course, the United States, but we had them from the British Isles and Hungary. I don't know if we had Asia. Did we have Asia? I'm not sure, but it was extraordinary, and sort of it wore those of us out, that were the judges for it, because it was very difficult to come up with the winners. But yes, every year we have this. It's part of World Lemur Festival, and we invite anyone over 15 to participate in any medium. So yes, please let us know if you would like more information. The only other thing that I would like to say, besides a tremendous gratitude to Mark and to Katie for pulling all this together, and to you for your interest in Lemur Conservation Foundation. We're obsessed with lemurs around here. It's what we care about. But the important thing is to care about something. And it doesn't matter what it is, except you need to emotionally connect with it. It doesn't matter if it's an ecosystem or a tree or a bird or an animal or a river or a fish. It doesn't matter. But please, in the name of God, please dedicate yourself to one thing and make it something that you're emotionally connected to, and that you would really feel the loss if it disappeared from this planet. Because that's the only way we're all going to be able to get together and try to save this place. But I'm very grateful for your coming. Mark, do you want to say anything?
No, I want to thank you for your attendance today, too. It was our great pleasure, and hopefully someday we'll get to see you all in person.